Well, make a start. Thanks for coming along this morning, members, until we get a fifth member. Take briefings for no decisions. Members, can I just draw members' attention to a decision made by the Chairperson's Liaison Group at its meeting on the 16th of February. This decision concerns a pilot programme on the use of electronic devices in committee meetings by journalists and members of the public gallery. Members, if you see, basically it is people in the public gallery can't send text messages on tweet, but their phones must be in airplane mode. Okay, members. Just a brief overview of today's business. We have an SR on employment rights, departmental briefing on student support payments, departmental briefing on part-time and postgraduate student finance. Members, at this stage will move straight to agenda. Okay, can I just, before I go any further, sorry, just in regards to those in the public gallery, due to a change in our guidance from Chairman's Liaison Group, those in the public gallery are welcome to use their mobile devices as long as they're in airplane mode, and all devices must be muted. You're welcome to connect to the Assembly Wi-Fi, and password details are available on the gallery rules, but it's not permitted to take photographs or record any of today's meeting. Members are moving straight to agenda item 8, which is the departmental briefing on frequency of student support payments. It's on page 54 of your pack. And I welcome Sean Kerr, Acting Director of Higher Education Division, Mr Alan Russell, Higher Education Future Policy, and Mr John McCallaghan, Student Finance Branch. Morning, Sean. Over to you.
Thank you. If you're content, I'm going to provide just a brief context and then pass over to Alan, who will discuss the consultation in some more detail. At the moment, full-time undergraduates can access a package of maintenance support to assist with their living costs. As you can see from figure 1 in the paper we have provided, this is made up of both income-assessed grants and loans. The maximum package available for students living away from home outside of London is about £6,500 per year, and the minimum is a loan of about £3,600. The payments themselves are profiled triannually under present arrangements, roughly aligned to the beginning of each term. This helps with upfront costs such as accommodation and also allows students to budget ahead accordingly. This system is used in both England and Wales, while in Scotland a monthly payment system has been in place since 2007. However, concerns have been raised in recent times that these infrequent payments can also heighten the risk of financial mismanagement and, as a result, financial hardship among students. It has been contended that monthly payments would help students to manage their money more effectively and also be reflective of the way in which wages are paid. The National Union of Students and the National Association of Student Money Advisors launched a national campaign to change to monthly payments in February 2014, and it gained over 2,000 signatures. Locally, we have also had a petition which members will be aware of, supported by the NUS, USI, UUB, SU, UUSU and other student bodies, calling for the Minister to introduce monthly payments. That petition was signed by 117 people. In response, the Minister committed to exploring the issue in more detail through a public consultation exercise, and I will now pass over to Alan, who will tell you about the detail of the consultation and the responses received.
Okay, thanks, Shan. You'll already have gathered from Shan that this consultation was very much moved by students, and we were quite happy to be led by them in terms of the options we considered in the consultation. The first option we considered was the existing triannual payment system. The second was a monthly payment system with equally apportioned payments over the 12 months of the year. The third was the same thing except with a bigger payment in September to assist with some of the upfront costs Shan had talked about. And the final option was a replication of the Scottish system, which is a front-loaded monthly payment system, but only during term time, so students wouldn't receive payments usually in July and August. Those options, there's a figure in your packs which shows what the payments might look like under those options, and I just want to qualify that for a second, because that shows what the payments would look like for a student receiving the maximum annual package of about £6,500. A lot of students at the lower end of the or higher end of the income assessment would only be receiving about £3,500 annually. So those payments would halve for those students. We displayed the options in the consultation and asked respondents which they preferred. We also tried to provide a bit of an evaluation of their pros and cons. Sian's already talked about the pros and cons of the status quo in terms of helping with upfront costs, but not necessarily promoting good budgeting throughout the year. We tried to bear that out as best we could, in particular by looking at the university hardship and student support funds, which are demand-led funds which students can access during the year when they encounter financial difficulties. And we were able to see that there are spikes in payments of those funds, particularly in December, and also in March and April time, which would align with the tail ends of each of the first two maintenance instalment periods. So the consultation had 17 responses. 7 or 8 of those, were from organisations, including 2 student bodies, NUSUSI and Queen's Students' Union. In numbers terms, the most popular option amongst respondents was the Scottish model. 7 respondents favoured that option, which is about 41%. But 4 out of the 8 organisations that responded were unsure, and that includes the 2 student bodies that responded to the consultation. Before I finish, I just want to talk briefly about the main reasons why people were unsure. The first was cost. About a third of all respondents expressed concerns about the costs outlined in the consultation of introducing a more frequent payment system. Those costs have been initially estimated by the Student Loans Company at between about £250,000 and £350,000, and a lot of respondents expressed concerns, particularly in the current context, of wider cuts to higher education budgets and reductions in student places. And the other main reason why people were unsure, and this includes the student bodies that responded, was because they couldn't reach consensus within their membership about which was preferred, and they encouraged the department to undertake more research into the financial needs of students before any change was committed to. So that's it, I think. Shannon, do you have anything to add?
Just really if you have any questions.
Okay. Minister's intention then?
Well, he hasn't made a decision yet in terms of what he wants to do. That's largely to do with the timescales involved in making a change. The commissioning process for the Student Loans Company for the 17-18 academic year is already underway. So the earliest that could possibly be changed would be the 18-19 academic year, which is obviously quite a ways into the next term. So the Minister hasn't taken a decision on the back of the consultation.
Will the Minister take a decision? Do we know?
Well, we can't speak for what the Minister will decide, but we're expecting a decision not to be made until the next Minister.
Okay. The Student Loan Company has indicated it will take between $250,000 and $350,000 to implement any change to Northern Ireland. Is that a one-off payment?
Yes, that would be a one-off implementation cost for them to make the various changes they need to their systems and their procedures. And we would expect most of those costs to fall in the financial year before the year in which the change is implemented. So they would fall in 17-18 financial year.
But you were sort of indicating there, Alan, that you've already started the negotiations for next year's student loan with next year's Student Loan Company.
Yeah.
Could that condition not be put in for the following year's award of that contract? Or is that not possible?
Do you mean could we put it into the 17-18 commission? That process.
Rather than paying the extra money on it, could it not be a request for them to deliver it?
Well, it would still cost money no matter what year it's implemented for. That's a resource cost to them to actually make the system changes required. So whether they make it for 17-18, 18-19, those costs would still apply.
Okay. David?
That's what you're trying to find out there. That's an annual cost to the process, or is it a one-off cost?
No, that's a one-off cost for them to implement the change. There would be some additional annual costs just by virtue of the fact that more payments are being made under a monthly system, but those wouldn't be onerous. The main cost involved would be the one-off implementation cost.
And just on follow-up that, the reasons for it being back to 1819 potentially, why is that? What
Well,
so difficult about the process to push it back a couple of years?
Well, there are really long time scales involved with this, not least so that students can be made aware of what support's available to them and when they're going to get it, well in advance of even applying for their courses. The 17-18 commissioning process is at a fairly advanced stage at the moment, and as I said, a decision hasn't been made on the back of the consultations, so any change couldn't have been included in that.
Okay, Bronwyn?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. Reference was made to the Scottish model as a means of maybe potentially addressing the support needs of full-time undergraduates. In terms of those respondents who didn't know, did they suggest a model maybe that would require further scrutiny analysis as a possible means forward?
Sorry, do you mean, did anybody suggest alternative models to the ones outlined in the consultation? We did ask a question of respondents of whether or not there were additional options which weren't being considered in that pack of 4. The main things that people said were, first of all, the main problem is the level of support available rather than the frequency of support. And the other main option which people asked for was to give students a choice between the existing triennial system and a monthly system. That student choice option was ruled out at a fairly early stage of the development of the consultation for reasons of additional cost, first of all, because it would cost more to run 2 models simultaneously, and also for reasons of complexity, both to administer for the student loans company, but also complexity for students in terms of understanding what support's available to them and when. So those were the main additional suggestions made.
You also mentioned that some of the students suggested that we require further research. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think we're very happy to work with NUSUSI, who have offered to assist us with that, to see what additional research can be carried out into this. They did do their own survey a little while ago called Pound in Your Pocket, and one of the things they asked about was the frequency of payments, and they found that I think 50% of higher education students would prefer a monthly payment, but there's still a massive chunk as well who prefer the triennial system. So,
Okay.
all right.
Thanks.
Anna?
Thank you very much. The Scottish model has been in place since, 2007 and 8?
Yep.
How has it been working? I mean, any student feedback on, is it better for them, easier for them, or is there have you any evaluation of the system?
Well, I find it quite difficult to actually get feedback on how it's working. You do hear anecdotally of students encountering difficulties in the summer months in particular when they don't receive payments. One of the other things we did in the consultation to try and compare the different models was we looked at non-continuation rates among students in the 4 UK nations, because one of the main reasons people often suggest that students don't complete their studies is because of financial difficulties. And I would urge caution about drawing too many conclusions from this, but Scotland does have the worst non-continuation rates in the UK, and Northern Ireland actually has the best. There's obviously still work to be done there, because a 0% non-continuation rate is better than the 6.5% we have at the moment, but that is better than Scotland.
Okay. Although your sample, the responses are quite small, though, you really need to do a bit more, wider search of opinion. You're talking just of a few people responding. But I mean, certainly I think it makes sense with the Scottish model. Seems to have, been tried out. And I mean, in my constituency of South Belfast, as you know, with high percentage of students in the Holy Land, and a lot of residents would blame students at the very beginning of their term with too much money in their pocket, and that's why go out and get drunk and cause a lot of trouble in the area. So maybe, splitting it out, although, September is important, they have to get the deposit for rent, so I just think that Scottish model sounds, quite sensible
Yeah.
for students and probably for parents too. Thinking. And a lot of students nowadays work in the summer, and they're sitting at home 2 months without student loan. I think is manageable for many.
Yes, I did mention the spikes in hardship fund payments at the end of the first 2 maintenance instalment periods. We didn't see the same kinds of spikes at the end of the final period, which would align with the summer months. So there is evidence to support that the summer months are much more manageable for students, which would lend weight to the Scottish model, obviously.
Can they also apply for an employment benefit, job seekers allowance during the summer?
No.
No, they can't. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Okay, folks, thank you. Members, moving on then, agenda item 9, which is a departmental briefing, part-time and postgraduate student finance. Sean and Jonathan, you're staying with us for this briefing. So, members, it's page 116 of your packs. Okay, Sean, over to you.
Thank you. Well, in the previous session, we were focused predominantly on student support for full-time undergraduates, the vast majority of our student population. As discussed, these students can access a student support package made up of both maintenance loans and grants and a loan to cover the cost of their fees. However, the situation is rather different for students who are either studying part-time or are in top postgraduate courses such as master's courses. For postgraduate students, there is no standard finance package available, and as a result, the vast majority, especially at taught levels, must self-fund their studies. For part-time students, there are grants available to assist with both their tuition fees and course-related costs such as books and equipment. As you can see from Figure 5 in your packs, they are income assessed and heavily weighted towards people from very low income backgrounds. In reality, about 3/4 of existing students are not eligible to receive them, and even the maximum grant available is often not enough to cover the full cost of the tuition fees charged. However, if we look at the strategic context, skills forecasts consistently show that we need to increase the skills levels within our workforce if we are to meet the needs of the economy. As the skills barometer highlights, this demand is only set to grow with the introduction of a lower rate of corporation tax. The traditional supply of higher level skills from school leavers alone will not be enough. As such, there is a need to focus on upskilling and reskilling our existing workforce and to consider more diverse forms of delivery. Part-time study is, as many of you outlined in the debate on this very subject on the 7th of December, a crucial enabler of higher education for people who are already working or have other commitments, such as caring responsibilities. Similarly, we also need to look beyond the undergraduate degree and do more to help people gain postgraduate qualifications. This was the focus of the Department's consultation on part-time and postgraduate student finance, which launched in June last year. Again, I'm just going to hand over to Alan, who will tell you more about the consultation, the responses and the outcomes so far.
Okay, thanks, Shan. Shan mentioned the consultation was designed to look at new ways to improve access to part-time and postgraduate study, specifically through the student finance system. To be more specific again, through the student loan system. And before I get into the options too much, I just want to explain that a little bit. The reason they all focused on the student loan system was for reasons of affordability. Student loans are accounted for differently than grant-based funding. HM Treasury provides us with annual cover for our student loan requirements, and that cover is not just for the upfront cost of the loans, but also to represent any expected subsidy on those loans as a result of the fairly generous income contingent repayment terms. So that's why they were all based within the context of the student loan system. Beginning with part-time, we looked at 2 main options in the consultation. The first involved completely replacing the fee grants, which Shan has mentioned, with much more generous and non-income assessed tuition fee loans to better assist students with the full cost of their tuition fees and also to widen eligibility away from just low-earning students. The second involved retaining the existing fee grants and simply topping them up with a non-income assessed loan. And under both of those options, the ambition was to provide part-time students with the same level of finance for their tuition fees as their full-time counterparts. So just to give an example, in the current academic year, maximum fee loans for full-time students is £3,800. A part-time student studying at 50% intensity would be eligible to half of that, or £1,900. The difference with the two options is one would be through a loan only, and one would be through a combination of grants and loans. The consultation asked respondents which option they preferred, obviously. It also asked questions about the potential need to regulate fee levels at universities themselves to ensure that the level of fees charged doesn't exceed the level of loan available, and various other questions around different design features of the loans. For the postgraduate options, they all focused on taught postgraduates, which is mainly master's students as opposed to research postgraduates, which would mainly be PhDs. And the reason for that is because there's a much broader pool of competitive scholarship funding available for research students. We looked at three options in the consultation. The first two were quite similar. They both looked at introducing non-income assessed tuition fee loans for top postgraduate students, similar to the full-time loans. The difference with those two options was one was for economically relevant subjects only, which were to be defined at a later date, and the other was for all subject areas. And both of those options, and this is really important, would have involved students being able to just extend the balance on their existing undergraduate loans. And that's important because the third option involved an entirely separate student loan. It was modelled on proposals in England at the time for a £10,000 contribution to cost loan paid directly to students to assist them with whatever costs required. But that would have been a second postgraduate loan, which they repay at the same time as their undergraduate loan, and in effect it would have doubled students' monthly repayments. So those were the postgraduate options. We also asked about fee regulation as well for postgraduate. We had 17 responses to that consultation as well, same as the last one, and 9 of those were from organisations, including all 3 local universities and various student bodies. There were preferred options amongst respondents for both part-time and postgraduate. The preferred option for part-time was the top-up loan, and most people who explained that explained it on the basis that the existing grants are really important for low-earning students, and part-time students as a group are generally more debt-aware and debt-averse than full-time undergraduates, so the removal of the grants entirely could actually have the opposite of the desired effect and deter people from entering part-time study. And the likes of the Open University as well were able to demonstrate that about 50% of their students access the grants, so the impact on them and their students would have been disproportionately high compared to the sector at large. For postgraduate, the preferred option was the tuition fee loan, and again, respondents generally explain that on the basis of the weaknesses of the other 2 options. The strategic option was deemed too narrow in scope, and it was also contended that it could undermine the importance of subjects not defined as economically relevant. And the contribution to cost option, it was generally just felt that the differing repayment arrangements would be too onerous for students, and it was preferable to allow them to simply extend their balance on their existing loans. So the consultation closed in September last year, and since then the Minister has taken decisions on both the part-time and postgraduate loans. We're quite limited in what we can say on the latter because that hasn't been announced yet. But for part-time, he announced his intentions last Friday, and that's very much in keeping with the responses to the consultation. The intention is to introduce a top-up tuition fee loan for part-time students. The overall level of finance will be linked to the full-time undergraduate loans, and that'll be available for both new and existing students. It's fairly common practice for new student finance products to make them available to new students only, on the basis that existing students entering their 2nd or 3rd year, or whatever it might be, should really have access to the same support available to them when they entered their studies. But because we intend on keeping the existing grants and the top-up loans are completely optional, we saw no reason to exclude existing students as well. So again, Sian, unless you have anything to add, I think we're ready for questions now.
Postgraduate student then announcement, can we expect that sometime?
In March, certainly, yeah.
In March, okay. In regards to the part-time, you say that won't change for any people who are already started a part-time course?
Well, their access to grants won't change because we're keeping them, but we will also give them access to the new top-up loans if they want them.
I'm glad because you referenced the debate that this committee sponsored in regards to the value of part-time higher education, and I think it's welcome that that was taken on board and has been noticed. Can I just ask the rationale for the 4 years before the repayment starts?
Oh yes, the differing repayment arrangement. Well, the core repayment terms for the new loans will be identical to the full-time ones, but I think what you're referring to is the part-time students will be eligible to enter repayment earlier. Full-time students enter repayment in April after finishing their course, but a lot of part-time courses, depending on how intensely the student's studying, can last a very, very long time. So that was simply to ensure that students enter repayment early enough to have any hope of repaying the loan in full, and to obviously make the loan sustainable on a long-term basis. I mean, to give an extreme example, students studying at 25% intensity on an 8-year degree course could be students for a very long time, 32 years. And if they're not entering repayment until April after finishing their course, it's important to reiterate as well that the repayments are income contingent, so they're eligible to begin repaying, but they won't actually repay until they're earning enough to do so.
And that's £16,000.
It's £17,335 income threshold.
I'll give you another extreme example. Alan, somebody doing an HE, or somebody doing a degree through the Open University that took 8 years, is that they would start repaying after 4 years, even though they're still...
They would be eligible to begin repaying after 4 years. Whether they would be or not would depend on what they're earning.
So if they're earning over the threshold, they would still have to start repaying?
Yes, so I mean they would be adding to the balance on their loan with each year of additional fee support, while also paying off that as well.
Okay. Also declaring interest, that was me I was talking about.
Okay.
That's a long haul. Admire determination.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. And this really is a very, very important area of work. So I commend the department in taking this forward. Are there any proposed legislative changes for implementing this new student support scheme? And if so, what is the timescale around that?
The changes would require amendments to the existing student support regulations. The timescales for that are usually in this autumn before the academic year which they're meant to apply. So our intention is hopefully to have these new loans in place for the 17-18 academic year, which means this autumn. We're probably talking actually July-ish time for the regulations to be considered by a committee.
Okay, Anna?
Thank you, Chair. Sonny, absolutely, I think great idea, and I really commend the Department and the Minister for offering this support to students. I think it's very much needed. I think, like the Chair, I did part-time study, higher education studying, and yep, know the long haul. But I just wonder if someone did the undergrad in, say, OU, and then want to do postgrad, also part-time, would they be eligible for that, still that top-up fees?
At the postgraduate level?
At postgrad, if it's, you know, if it's granted.
No, the part-time top-up loan is for part-time undergraduates.
Yes, at the moment, yeah.
Yes.
If it's approved for postgrads as well.
As I say, we're limited in what we can say for postgraduates,
Okay.
but the intention for any of the options would be to make them available on a part-time basis as well.
Okay.
So whether that's the tuition fee loan or the contribution to cost loan, or whatever it might be. So that wouldn't be a top-up loan, that would be the same as the full-time postgraduates.
Right, so I mean, they can, if they continue to do a master's part-time, would they continue to get the loan, the top-up?
Not the top-up loan. Once they enter their postgraduate course, they would be eligible to apply for whatever the postgraduate loan is, be it the tuition fee loan or the contribution to cost loan, and we would intend on making that available on a flexible basis, depending on intensity of study.
Okay, because really it's useful. I think now a lot of people go for part-time.
Yes.
Part-time postgrad. I did that.
Yeah, the profile of, part-time versus full-time is certainly more balanced at the postgraduate level than at the undergraduate level.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, members, no? Okay. Sean, Jonathan, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, moving back then briefly, apologies that I have recorded for today's meeting is Brad, Gerard, Phil and Claire.
Yep.
Any more apologies? Anyway. Members, Chairperson's business is at page 5 of the pack. Is a draft press release regarding publication of the committee inquiry report. Members, I take it you've read the draft release. I just suggest one small change, sorry. Chairperson Committee Robin Swan said my committee has spent. Our committee.
Our committee?
Our committee, not my committee.
I'll go give it to you.
No, you're right. I take full responsibility for your question. Also, members, content with that press release?
Yes. Yeah.
Also advise members that the Deputy Chair and I met with the Minister yesterday regarding a legislative consent motion for the Enterprise Bill going through Westminster. The bill relates to the introduction of a levy on employers who have a pay bill of over $3 million to fund apprenticeships. The LCM will allow HMRC to share data on the scheme with Dell. Dell officials will brief the committee on the LCM at next week's meeting. But given the short time period until the end of the mandate, the committee will need to convene an additional meeting to agree the committee's report on the LCM. Members, do you agree to schedule a meeting if necessary?
Monday the 7th.
Well, possibly Monday the 7th if we get it through executive.
Yeah, the latest it can be is Tuesday the 8th, because you have to have a paper table for the business committee by 12 noon on Tuesday the 8th, for it to get onto the order paper for the next week, which is the last week of the week before dissolution.
It'll be a very brief meeting.
Yeah.
We'll have to do it. Okay, members, draft minutes of our last meeting, the 17th of February, are at page 8 of your pack. Members content those are a true record of that meeting? True. So I sign them as being accurate. Matters arising, members then listed at page 15, agreed action points from the meeting on the 17th of February. Members, are you content with those action points as listed? Content? Correspondence is at page 17 and also tabled. Members, can I just draw your attention to page 29 as regard correspondence from NICVA regarding what they initially requested was an informal meeting with the chairperson and the secretariat for the Voluntary and Community Sector Departmental Monitoring Group. An informal meeting was agreed at last week's meeting, but members, if you look at it now, it's a bit more than an informal meeting. It's asking myself and the clerk to attend a full round table of all their member organisations to discuss the work of the committee and what we see as our legacy. OFM, DFM and DARD have agreed to do it, members, so it's just, I can't see how we shouldn't, but it's just seek your approval that we seek a date. Okay. Okay, members, also tabled is a response from the Committee for Enterprise, Trade and Investment regarding a joint meeting between the two committees and the two ministers to discuss the job losses at Bombardier. Kathy, do you want to?
Basically, I'm still trying to get a date for a meeting with the two ministers, so we're still working on it. As soon as we can, we will.
Okay, members, have to note. Bronwyn?
Chair, under correspondence.
Yep.
Okay, the page 37, the UK Commission's Employer Skills Survey 2015, and our own Skills Barometer report. I think it wouldn't do any harm to get a comparative analysis of both of them.
Okay. Ask the department for that. Members content? Right. Members, page
Chair,
35.
just on the Bombardier thing,
Yep.
I was just wondering, I know a lot of the focus has been on the sort of the Bombardier itself. But is there any research or information being made available as to what the knock-on effects are to any sort of subsidiary contractors or companies in Northern Ireland who also may be affected?
We can ask David, I don't think there has.
It would be interesting just to clarify that if it's
Just anxious
possible.
the knock-on effect.
I've heard it in the radio that there will be, and I know Tyrone's going to be hit as well. So I think that information would be useful.
Just even before our meeting, our joint meeting with Daddy and the ministers. Okay, members, page 35, there are 2 invitations listed. If members wish to attend the events, can you please speak to a member of the committee staff? Over page 40 is our draft forward work programme for our next 3 meetings and possibly a special meeting in between that as well. Other briefings may be scheduled as they arise. Members agreed? Content? Members, agenda item 7 ends in SR is at page 42 of your pack. It's SR 2016-037, Employment Rights, Increase of Limits Order for Northern Ireland 2016. Department laid the statutory rule on the 12th of February. The statutory rule is subject to the laying requirement, but not to any form of resolution by the Assembly. The SR is intended to fulfil a statutory requirement placed in the Department by Article 33 of the 1999 Order to adjust limits on statutory awards and payments under employment rights legislation in line with annual changes in the rate of inflation. The effective figures of the limits on the various statutory awards and payments provided for under employment rights legislation. These awards include the amount of a week's pay for the purpose of statutory redundancy payments and the maximum amount that can be awarded by an industrial tribunal following a finding that a person has been unfairly dismissed. The committee considered the proposal to make the statutory rule at its meeting on the 10th of February 2016 and agreed that it was content with the proposed statutory rule. The examiner of statutory rules has advised that he has no issues to raise regarding the bill. Are members content with the proposals for the statutory rule?
Content.
Content. If so, members, the Committee for Employment and Learning has considered SR 2016-037, the Employment Rights Increase of Limits Order Northern Ireland 2016, and has no objection to the rule. Members agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, members, can I move then to agenda item 10, which is any other business? Members, if we have no other business, date, time and place of next meeting. Next meeting will take place 10 a.m. Wednesday the 2nd of March 2016 in room 29, Parliament Buildings. Members, the meeting is adjourned.
Room 29. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room